7 key gold storage must-haves. Learning from Venezuela's battle with the Bank of England and Trump's White House. Hi, I'm Mark O'Byrne, the Research Director of goldcore.com, your precious metal storage specialist. And today we're going to consider one of the biggest stories in the gold market at the moment, which is the ongoing battle that's going on between the Maduro government in Venezuela and both the Bank of England and more recently the Trump White House has weighed in. So it's got very, very interesting indeed. And like a lot of things in the gold market, it's quite opaque, and it's very hard to know exactly what's going on. You know, there's a lot of hearsay and rumors and certain people saying one thing and other people saying another thing, and ultimately it is just very, very hard to know what's going on. So I suppose I'll give the context in terms of the background and a little bit of what the speculation is happening, and then ultimately what's most important for gold buyers out there and gold investors and what we need to focus on. So basically, yeah, Venezuela is, was one of the wealthiest countries in South America, and just through, I suppose, a lot of corruption over the years, both with right-wing governments in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. There was a lot of corruption and nepotism and all the rest. And then more recently, they've had left-wing governments and socialist governments, which have been spending a huge amount of money and basically living beyond their means. And I think Chavez was quite a well-intentioned individual and well-loved by most of the people in Venezuela, but his policies were very, very left-wing and haven't really resulted in helping Venezuela. In fact, they've decimated the small amount of middle class that was there, So since Chavez died, Maduro has come into power, and the problems in Venezuela have just gotten worse and worse, and they've been printing money and basically living beyond their means. And now, I mean, hyperinflation has taken off. It's just shocking what's going on. There's a humanitarian crisis. People just can't afford to feed themselves, and the currency is absolutely collapsing. I don't know what the inflation number is. I might have one of the things I'm going to share with you in a second. It's thousands, hundreds of thousands of percent is the inflation. So, and what tends to happen then is obviously gold becomes vital and becomes, a key asset for both people, particularly people, but also for governments. So the Maduro regime is basically trying to repatriate the gold reserves. Chavez had taken a lot of the gold reserves back into from central banks, including the Federal Reserve in America. And with great fanfare, Chavez brought a lot of that gold back to have it in safekeeping in Caracas. And more recently, Maduro, just in the last little while, Maduro's been trying to get the gold back from the Bank of England with great difficulty. And then obviously the Trump White House weighed in with John Bolton. So just I'll quickly look at the, I suppose, the context here. Let me share my screen. So, yeah, so basically gold remains the key monetary reserve internationally. So every major central bank in the world has large gold reserves. And you have to ask the key question, why is that? Why haven't they sold their gold reserves? Well, it's because they know it's a safe haven asset, it's a hedging instrument, and it's the ultimate form of money in the world. And that's why the US remains, allegedly, that they haven't ordered their reserves since 1950, but allegedly remains the largest gold hold in the world. Germany, Italy, France, as you can see in the graphic here. Russia coming on very strong in recent years, and China, and these are the large creditor nations that are increasing their gold reserves at a very rapid rate. So that in itself tells a story. So Venezuela, there's been a big movement to repatriate gold in recent years by nations, particularly nations that are worried about the US deposition, which is completely unsustainable, and they have all the hallmarks of going bankrupt with Trump at the helm. He is a great man at bankrupting institutions and organizations, and the deficits over there are heading over a trillion per year. So there has long been concerns about the trajectory that the US is on in terms of the both the national debt, but also the massive unfunded liabilities of between 100 trillion and 200 trillion. So this has led to gold repatriation throughout the world. Central banks around the world, including the German central bank, the Bundesbank, have been repatriating the gold. And you can see in here, Venezuela, 2012, the Banco Central de Venezuela, BCV, had 211 tons of its 360 tons of gold reserves in America, European and Canadian banks. So Chavez brought a lot of it back, and now, as I said, Maduro's trying to get it back from the Bank of England. And the Bank of England has refused the withdrawal of the 14 tons of gold that the Venezuelan central bank has, and this has been at the request of top U.S. officials, including the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and that other uber hawk, warmonger extraordinaire, Mr. John Bolton, who is the national security advisor, Trump's national security advisor. So right there, you can see what a strategic important asset gold is for these senior people in the Trump White House to have intervened and potentially put pressure on the Bank of England not to release that gold. So then there's actually some of the gold that's in Caracas, and there's a huge amount of speculation in the media internationally about Maduro trying to sell that gold because he needs to sell that what is actual real hard currency to raise cash, and he's trying to get dollars and euros in order to fund the regime and keep his government going, So gold is coming in. It's acting as a form of insurance for this desperate government, whether you like them or loathe them. Obviously, there's a new government there, there's a disputed election, but I'm not going to get into the politics of that. The bottom line is that gold is a very useful asset for these people in order to maintain the running of the government. So they are trying to sell the gold, and there's been speculation about, including from US officials, that Russian planes had landed in Caracas to collect the gold. So there's a lot of speculation in the media saying, oh, the Russians are the Venezuelans trying to sell the gold to Russia, the Russian state or Russian institutions. And then there's speculation about so I'll show you some of that there. So that's an interesting article from Bloomberg, just looking at how the currency reserves of Venezuela have plummeted, and now they're desperately, looking at the gold reserves in effect to help themselves. This is the Bank of England. They froze 1.56 billion worth of Venezuela gold reserves. So that's a lot of money and a lot of gold, and if they get their hands on that money, obviously that could, secure their power base and help run the government if they're of mind to look after the people. They can provide essential service and all the rest for a period of time. Then there was a speculation about the UAE and a company called Noor Capital, and whether Reuters said that Noor Capital said that they bought 3 tons of gold from Venezuela. Subsequently, that's been denied, and some people are speculating that the pressure that was put on by the United States of America on Noor Capital and the UAE, that they actually stopped them from doing that, or potentially reverse that deal. So it just shows you what an important key gold asset and how important gold reserves are as a strategic monetary asset. There's an interesting article here from Sputnik News. This is just a few things. I went into Google News and just quickly brought these up before we started the interview. There's an interesting article here. Gold, not oil, may now be the key to Venezuelan government's survival, which various analysts are saying, because the gold, when they sell the gold, they can use it to keep the country running, and this was very much our experience as a company during the financial crisis. A lot of our UK, Irish and international clients, gold is the one asset that performed well for them. They had huge losses on stocks, on property, and gold was one of the few liquid assets they had that they could actually sell. And someone sold some of their gold reserves after it had gone up massively, and then they used that to either pay down debt or to look after their family needs and to keep their families running, so to speak. So yeah, the White House warned, stay away from gold. It's stolen from people by the Maduro mafia. Well, there's a lot of mafia out there today in all sorts of different governments, and I don't think the Trump White House is particularly innocent in this regard. And I'm not getting into the partisan thing of the Democrats and Republicans and all that Punch and Judy nonsense. There's a lot of corruption throughout the world, and a lot of people are trying to get their hands on the gold, and none of them have, I would say, clean hands in this regard, or very, very few of them. So the bottom line is that the victims of all this are, again, the people, and the people who don't have gold, and the poorest people and the middle class people have been decimated in this country because their currency has collapsed because of the incompetent management of all the politicians over a long number of years, and there's real parallels to the Western world, and the trajectory that we're going on at this moment in time is we will end up as Venezuela in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years if we're not very, very careful indeed, unless we step back from the brink and realize that these policies are completely unsustainable. So this is a humanitarian crisis, and we're losing sight of that. And the sanctions that the US has put in terms of prohibiting the export of US oil, light oil, into Venezuela, and the prohibition on the Venezuelans selling their oil internationally is further crippling the Venezuelan economy and putting even more pressure and creating an even bigger humanitarian crisis. And this is what happened in Iraq, where millions of people, men, women, children, died prior to the war in Iraq. And unfortunately, this is potentially where this ends up, because the economic war tends to be followed. Obviously, there's currency wars, there's gold wars, people trying to get their hands on the gold, and trade wars, and then ultimately it tends to end in actual hot wars. And this is a World War III fears. Venezuela warns US of irreparable losses over military intervention. So, this is where this potentially could end up if, the hawks have their way, and there are a lot of very hawkish people now in the Trump White House, and let's just hope that calmer heads and common sense prevails, because it's in nobody's interest to have a war here, particularly the people of America and of Venezuela. So that's what's going on. It's a tragic story, unfortunately. But I suppose what's important is that we learn the lessons of it as individuals, and as families and companies, and indeed investors. So it sort of points to the importance of owning gold in the safest way possible. It clearly shows possession is 9/10 of the law, so it shows the case for people to actually take insured delivery of their gold and keep it in a very, very safe place. Be very discreet, don't tell people, and just be very creative in terms of where you hide and where you store it. Obviously, don't do that if you feel in any way insecure in your own home or in your office, or if you don't feel secure doing that, then don't do it. If anything's going to give you a sleepless night, obviously you don't do it. So then the safest way to own gold, if you're not going to take possession, is to own it the way that Goldcorp provides precious metal storage services, which is allocated and segregated. So each individual gold coin and gold bar is owned in your name. The client has outright legal ownership of their gold coins and gold bars. They can bypass Goldcorp and go directly to the vault provider, the safest vaults and safest jurisdictions in the world. And this is a fundamental thing that we've been talking about for many years. And this, what's happened in Venezuela, just shows it, because if you don't actually control, either possess it in your hands or own it with the safest vaults and have access to it and be able to move it, make it directionable, portable. This is the value of gold, and also the liquidity. The Venezuelans will find that the gold that they have in the Bank of England is not liquid. So you can have gold in the wrong vaults. You can have gold in an ETF with a bank or a bank, many banks as custodians and sub-custodians. And if the banks get into difficulty again, which they will, it's only a matter of time, then you're going to have a systemic crisis. You're going to have bank closures, bank holidays, all the rest, and you simply your ETF will become illiquid, So again, and then there's also the risk from digital gold providers that you have your only access to your gold is through their website, one website, whatever it is .com. And if their servers go down, if they're hacked, if there's any problems with their website, you cannot sell your gold. So it's not a prudent way. If it's fine if you're going long or short or taking a punt on gold, but if you're actually buying gold because you believe it's a safe haven asset, which it is, all the academic research, all the independent asset allocation experts, their research clearly shows this, you have to own the safest way possible. So yeah, I just quickly, it's something we've talked about for years, and we've done a few guides on it. This is the 7 key gold and silver investing must-haves, and in here you can see what some of the things I just spoke about there in terms of ETF gold, online platforms, allocated, segregated, the legal structure. So that's the bailment. So we only allow people to own gold in bailment, which means you have outright legal ownership of that gold. You're not an unsecured creditor of the provider or of the custodian. Insurance is vital. It's vital that your gold is insured and the vault providers are insured and there's adequate coverage in that regard. The chain of integrity, who you buy from, and making sure that the gold remains in that chain of integrity, and that ensures the authenticity of those gold coins and gold bars. And the big thing we talk about is that directional, movable, portable. So, can you access your gold? Can you visit your gold? Can you view your gold, collect your gold whenever you want? Can you move it to a third-party provider quite easily and be able to secure that all-important both liquidity, but also competitive pricing? Because if you are dependent on one sole gold broker, gold provider, they can widen the spreads and they can charge you much, much more than you should be charged because it's not competitive. Whereas if you own 100 gold kilo bars with us, and you decide you want to sell it, you don't have to take the price that we're offering you. You can shop around and make sure that we're giving you a competitive price. And I think that's absolutely fundamental as well, So that competitive pricing and that liquidity is very, very important because, any of these entities could be bought by a large bank, large hedge fund, and they could quickly just change the terms and conditions and move the pricing out, So, and you're a price taker, not a price maker. So there's some pretty fundamental considerations there. I mean, this guide is excellent and really gets into the nitty gritty of it. And all you have to do is just is sign up for it there, and you can access that guide. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to email us, call us, or interact with us on the various social media channels, and we'll answer any questions you have. So yeah, a tragic story in terms of what's happening in Venezuela, and it's unfortunately going to get worse before it gets better. But there's real lessons for us all, and we need to take on these hard lessons because these are real risks out there today, and there's no point in sugarcoating it and completely ignoring them and putting our heads in the sand like ostriches. So again, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's just the sad fact of the financial and monetary world that we live in today. So thanks for your time, and yeah, you can find us in all the usual channels, and subscribe to the market update on goldcore.com, and follow us on YouTube and all the usual social media channels. Thanks for your time. Take care. Bye-bye.